Okay guys, stay tuned. I'm going to show you how I did the emulsion lift with the Polaroid latest film in 2020. And it is definitely possible, but it is a little different. But I love doing emulsion lifts because it's a great way to display your Polaroids in an artistic way. As you can see here, in these two here. Also, don't forget to check the description. There's a lot of fun links in there and some links to help support my channel with Polaroid. Thank you. Okay, welcome back guys. So I've been seeing some Facebook groups on Polaroid and SX70, stuff like that, about people either questioning can you still do an emulsion lift in 2020, or some people saying they failed at it, they couldn't get it to work because the film's different. I will agree, I've already done one test run, I will agree that the film is different, but an emulsion lift is still very much possible. The difference is you got to use extremely hot water. Even hotter than your hot water tank can usually get to. So I boil mine. I don't bring it to boil temperature. I usually bring it to around 150 and 180. And then we go from there. You also got to let it set for quite a while now too in that hot water. So the things I recommend you to have, at least what I use, is I have two different glass baths here. They're Pyrex, so they'll be able to handle the high temperature of water, so you want to be very careful about what kind of glass you use or plastic. Make sure it can handle high temperature. I have one that's empty, which I'm going to be using for the hot water. This one's already filled up with some water. It's just cool tap water, and you'll see why we have the two different tanks here. I also recommend getting some brushes. I got these at the Hobby Lobby store for very cheap, like $5, $6 each. They're fan brushes, what these are called, and I prefer these because they give a better sweeping motion. Nothing's wrong with them, they're just wet right now because I already done one test run before I made this video. I also recommend having this round brush, they call it, or barrel brush. You'll see why I use this too, but I do recommend having one of these, but it's not required. You also need some scissors. You need a timer so you can keep track of how long the hot water has been going. And you also need to pick out a Polaroid that you're going to do the emulsion lift from. I'm going to do this photo here. And also I've already pre-boiled some water here in my kettle. And so what you do, cut on the white. Don't cut into the image. Leave a little bit of the white, on here when you're cutting. And actually I need to go get some rubber gloves, because I do recommend you having those. Hold on. Okay, so I got my rubber gloves on. Like I said, I really do recommend these. You are dealing with real chemical that's in this, and it's very corrosive, and it actually can make your fingertips tingle a little bit. So I'm sure it's not good to be on the skin. So we'll go ahead and cut the image. Like I said, keep a little bit of the white. Alright, so we have our image here. And if you pull kind of fast, you sometimes can preserve the negative from Polaroid. It's kind of cool to see sometimes. Because if you go kind of slow, it doesn't always show, come through. Let's see. Sometimes it's hard to get it started. There we go. Ready? So, I don't know if it shows up on here, but you can kind of see the negative in there. You can throw that away. Now, I did kind of already rip my emulsion. That's been happening a little bit. I don't know what's going on up here at the top. Maybe I'm cutting a little too close up there. So it is going to have a little bit of imperfection, but that's okay. Alright, so turn it over. And you'll add your hot water and go kind of slow. Don't pour it on the image. Pour it next to it. Alright, and after that, we will start the timer. And like I said, a good 20 to 30 minutes, just depending on how hot you got your water. But you want the water to be to where it doesn't burn you, is when you're about time to go. And as time goes on, you'll see bubbles form, which is totally normal. That's good because it's starting to already lift from the adhesive on the front of the image. So you want it to do that. While we're waiting for that too, the other thing I forgot to mention at the beginning of the video is watercolor paper is what I like to use. This is a 140-pound cold press. And so it's got a little bit of a surface on the one side of it and the other side is smooth. I prefer the textured side. And as you see here, it is too big for the bath. So we will trim it down a little bit. A little trimmer here. And I don't be perfect, I don't measure anything, I just take a few like an inch or so off of each side. And let's see. And it fits in there just almost. You want to have a little extra room. So you don't want it to fit like perfect in there because then you won't have room to mess around. So you can either go ahead and put your paper in there, which I recommend just so the paper is good and soaked. It kind of helps it because you're going to put the image on top of it anyways. So I'm not going to sit here and run the camera the whole 30 minutes. So we'll return here when our 30 minutes is up and show you how it looks and what you need to do. Also, too, another thing to note is completely normal. Your water will get a little bit of a pink to it. That's just from the chemicals. Again, that's why I suggest having gloves on. All right, so we'll return in a moment. Okay, guys, so here's the 20-minute mark. As you can see here, there's quite a few bubbles. Like I was saying, that's totally normal. Try to get some shadow here. Also, too, the color of the water is a little pinkish. Like I said, what happened, that's normal. The water's cooling down, but I'm still going to go the full 30 minutes. So just want to give you an update of how it's looking. And like I said, the bubbling is totally normal. You wanted to do that. Okay, guys, so we are at the 30-minute mark here. So we can turn that off. And as you can see here, it's really bubbled up. It's kind of hard to see, I know, with all the light. So what I like to do is sometimes you can just shake it around a little bit. And you can do that too while you're waiting for the 30 minutes if you have time to set here. And the most important thing is don't touch the image with your brush. You just use the brush underneath the water and to make waves of water to go over the image. You just go all around it. What you can sometimes do too is use your other brush. I'm hesitant to tell people to do this though, because until you really know, your technique, you don't want to touch it too much. But I only have like 2 or 3 bristles holding this corner. And this will help force some of the water. And see there, we finally got an edge to come up. That's good. I try not to touch that too much over there since that's ripped when we were pulling it apart. So I'm trying to keep away from that as much as possible because I don't want to run the risk of ripping my emulsion anymore. This is kind of a slow process, so I'll probably speed this up. But see here, the corner's already coming up pretty good. See? And so that's all you're doing is just getting some water to go over it and to force it in there. It'll come up. You just got to sometimes take a while. This right here might take 20 minutes sometimes to get an image to release completely. Just try to have patience because the more you rush it, the more chance you have of ripping it. And you don't want to do that. So I'll probably speed this up or stop the video, and then once we get it released, I'll show you guys what else to do. Okay, so we've got it separated now. As you can see here, I hope it's kind of showing up in the camera, there's this clearish film layer. That's the adhesive that keeps it stuck to the image, or to the front of the plastic. You need to separate that. And sometimes it comes off real easily. Like the image I did before this video, it did a great job. Didn't have to fight it. But here it started coming up with the emulsion. You don't want that to happen. Because that's a good way to rip your emulsion. So as you saw me kept working, I would hold down with my brush and then keep sweeping, trying to get it separated. Sometimes too, you can do is after you get it all off, if it doesn't separate, then take your fingers inside of here and kind of do that, but you're going to run the risk of really ruining your emulsion. But here you go. You guys can see it. It's a really snotty, layer, but you don't want that to be stuck to your emulsion, so you need to try to separate that. Okay, so we'll throw this away. Now the next thing you need to do is get it on the right side up. This is where you can rip it too. This is where it takes a lot of just practice and learning what you can and can't do. But get your brush up underneath it. Like that. That's close enough. And just pull it up out of there. Now transfer it to the other bath now. Get this out of the way. It's always a good idea to have some paper towel around to clean up your water mess. This can get a little messy. I also like to wipe off the brushes a little bit. Now the tricky part is now getting this. Okay, so sorry I had a little difficulty there. You can go ahead and remove your gloves now because most of the chemicals washed away. And the secret now is to hold your paper down and get this off your brush without ripping it. Now it's going to be trying to get this on here. This can be very tedious as well. What I try to do is start with one edge and get it as straight as possible. And then try to move it to the center of your paper as close as you can. You get at least one edge started as close to the, straight as possible. You're going to be good. Now the way to start working this is pull it up out of the water. Slowly at first. Well, now, like I said, this is where it gets really crazy. Trying to get it flipped over in the right direction without ripping it. Sometimes too you can do this and pat it down. But again, you gotta be very careful because this thing is so crazy thin, it can rip so easily. Alright, you see that I use my finger to just hold on one edge of it. Now to straighten this out, this is kind of fairly easy, but go kind of slow. If you dunk it back in there again, and there you go. I got the image. It's going to be impossible for you to ever get it straight on the paper. So what I like to do next, you can move this, is you can take your barrel brush, get it wet. You don't want dry bristles or you'll poke right through this. And, see there's still some white specks here on it from the chemical. You can kind of wash those off by doing this. But be careful because you can remove your image again, like I almost did. So it's close enough for me. And then you can roll up the edges so they're not perfect. Alright, another thing I like to do is go ahead and put it on some paper towel. This is going to help with the drying process. And you get some flakes on there, you can do this. Just don't run this over your image or you can rip it again. Now as this dries, what I like to do is use some paperweights or anything that's heavy and put in all four corners. Make sure it's not touching the emulsion, because once when it dries it will stick to that. I learned that the hard way with one of mine one time. As it dries though, sometimes this will curl up. That's okay. All you do is take your brush, wet it, and then pull down that curl as it's drying, because that does happen. I've got one over here. I can show you real quick what's happening. Okay, so here's one I did. This is the one I did test on earlier today. It's not 100% dried, the paper, but it's very close. And you can see here, see what happened? Don't panic. You can always put it back in the water bath to fix it, which is pretty simple. Kind of like earlier, you just get in there and pull it down. So see, we've saved it. And this doesn't always happen. Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. So if it does, you just got to do that, re-wet it down. If it's not a bad curl, you can just re-wet the brush and then kind of, hold it down like that. But I've been seeing this happen though sometimes. So I don't know if it's the watercolor paper, the type I use. Maybe a different brand might work better, but just watch it as it dries. But I just leave it out. Like I said, sometimes I put some paperweights. Sometimes you don't have to. It depends what you want. But after these dry, I'll show you real quick what the hell they turned out. Okay? Okay, guys. So what I've been experimenting with, because as you saw there how it curled up, I've been letting this one here dry, setting up like this. So you can see it here in the far corner with some paper towel underneath it. And so far it's doing really well. It's still, damp, but it's drying. And as you can see here, the texture of the watercolor paper is coming through, which I love that so much. This one here is where we fixed it. And so I've been doing the same thing. I had it set up like this with some paper towel, and it seems to be doing a much better job. Another thing you can do, now this is another area that you got to be very careful with, but take some of your paper towel and make like a knot at the end, so it's got a flat surface though. And you can dab the water off the top. That also helps, keep the emulsion down on the watercolor paper as it's drying. I did this probably after about 10 minutes of it setting up, and I still saw some water on top of the surface. And this will help facilitate the drying faster. But you want to go straight up and down. Do not move at all, or again, you're going to ruin your emulsion. Okay. And as you can see there, it's really pushed it into the watercolor, and the texture of the watercolor comes through the emulsion. I like that. You can do the same thing to this one. So it's coming through nicely, and it seems to be drying very well this time. Like I said, if you ever run into that where it curls over, just dip it back in the water as I showed you in the video, and you can save your emulsion as long as it don't rip. So I'm going to get a frame here. We're probably going to we'll frame both of them. I got two small frames. I cut, as much as possible, but it's not going to be perfect. And I'll show you how we put in the frame. Okay, so here's a couple frames here we're going to use. This is actually one I did. I love this type of frame though, how it is reseated in. This is actually an emulsion lift I did of my cat 2.5 years ago when I first got into Polaroids. So, and these frames I got at Hobby Lobby really cheap. But see, it held up really nicely. So we'll put this down like this. We'll use this one for that frame again. It's still not 100% dry, which is good. You don't want it to be 100% dry. At least I never have done that. So we'll kind of cut. You really just need the frame to judge and to measure for yourself. And I just do eyeball most things. So that's going to be good right there. See, that's going to cover the hole just fine. So we'll tape, Chloe is her name, down onto this piece. Or actually we'll probably have to do that. Use a piece of this here. But it's still being kind of wet. I'm not sure how well this will stick to this, but we will try. And we'll use our paper towel to press down. Then we'll put the frame back together. And there we go. That's one way. Another way, since this one's a little more straighter, this will be easier to use for this one here. And these are only like $4 or $5 at Hobby Lobby. Very cheap. So you can use this image here to judge where you want to cut. So we'll leave, go ahead and leave about probably a ½ inch over. We can kind of judge this. Don't want to lay on top there. You don't want it to possibly stick to the emulsion. So you can lay it underneath there. We're kind of close, but we need to still trim some more. So we'll turn it over. Make sure you're not going to cut into the emulsion. And there you go. Your emulsion is now framed and it's ready to be displayed. Alright, so if you guys enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. Also, share it across your social media platforms to help spread the word of my channel. And always look in the description. There's always a lot of fun links in there, and there's also links to help support my channel. And as always, you guys, thank you for being here, and see you in the next video. Bye!